Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of Metis Warrior here with Timothy and Alexandria.
Hello everybody.
And today we're going to talk about some shady activity going on within law firms and that are representing some of the residential school survivors. Very, very shady and severe allegations that involve one attorney by the name of Kevin T. Simcoe out of British Columbia, Kamloops, and we would invite him on the show to answer these allegations because there's a lot of points that Peter Aleck made during the show, and one of the allegations is that Kevin withheld the government check from him for quite some time, not just him but other clients as well, without telling them that he ever received a government check. And the question to that was that Peter had was, well, hell, did you put the money in the bank and draw interest on all your clients' checks before you issued it out? Is that what happened there? That's one question. Number two is, why did you withhold Peter's file, who was a client of the law firm that you was working for? Why did you withhold his file from him for 2 years? And three, another question he has is, how did a Chinese person's information get into his file? Now, we know that Peter has the response letter when he filed a complaint against Kevin T. Simcoe, and the response is where Kevin admitted wrongdoing and mishandling of the file, and then he said typos, etc., etc. Now, okay, so you admit to this, you get basically a slap on the wrist, no real punishment or anything, and you're listed out there as being in good standing. But here's the thing, we're bringing the light to the people that there's a lot of clients that are not happy with the attorneys out there, and you're one of them, Kevin. You're one of them. And so Peter has some serious allegations. We would like for you to respond to them. Again, you're invited on the show to answer these allegations.
And in my mind, and I'm sure after you listen to what Peter has to say, I certainly can't even wrap my head around how Kevin T. Simcoe could currently be in good standing, and Peter Aleck has serious allegations, and how, I mean, alleged breaches of Privacy Act, People's Social Security.
Well, he's admitted to it. Kevin admitted to it in the response. He admitted to the mishandling of the file. He admitted to typos. So, yeah.
And you know what, folks? Residential school survivors in Canada went through horrific sexual, physical abuse, so much, and then for residential school survivors to be abused further by the attorneys, alleged attorneys that are supposed to have their best interests at heart. And like I said, we're very privileged that we're going to be the first people breaking this story in regards to what Peter Aleck, currently out of British Columbia, has to tell us, folks.
But here's the thing, there's serious criminal allegations involving Kevin. One of them would be financial fraud, because and this is, again, it's an allegation, but Peter says that Kevin had his check for a long time, at least a year, maybe longer. If you listen to the interview, he actually says in there the amount of time. Now, anybody knows that when you put money in a bank, you oftentimes you draw interest off of that money. We're not saying that's the case of what happened here, but again, was this attorney taking money that was meant to be paid out to the clients, holding it in a bank account and receiving interest off of it? That's just one thing. Two is privacy and confidentiality. Again, when Peter got his file, he had access to people's social numbers and everything. And so, how did a Chinese person's information end up in Peter's file? It seems like this guy Kevin is not a great attorney at all. And I'm just not understanding, because he did admit to the mishandling of the file, and as he called it, typos that were in the file. So is a typo putting somebody's whole social information and private confidential information into a file, do you consider that a typo? Because that's a pretty serious damn typo.
Well, how is it a typo when you have information that shows what other residential school survivors, the monetary amount that they received from the government of Canada, their date of birth, medical numbers, again, and social insurance numbers floating around. I mean, that certainly is an alleged breach of privacy. Where's the code of ethics? Where is all that? And when he did mention, you'll hear in the show, that an individual that was supposed to be there as a support for residential school survivors did absolutely nothing, didn't support them. So what is the cover-up? What's really going on with trying to support and bring justice for residential school survivors in Canada? They are continuing to be dealt the card of injustice.
Another criminal accusation that was brought up was forgery. Peter says that when he looks at documents that had his name signed on it, that it was not his signature. He states that he did not give any attorney permission to sign his name to any document. So who signed his name to the documents? So again, I mean, that's forgery, folks. That's identity theft. What happened there? How did Peter's name get on documents where Peter states in his interview that he gave no one permission to sign his name, but yet a signature of his name is on documents? And he wonders who signed the name. We're not saying Kevin signed the name, but we're saying who signed the name. So we're asking the question, if the documents were in Kevin's possession, who signed these names? Peter, who signed the documents? I mean, so there's a lot of criminal activity that's being looked into here. And we're the first to actually really cover this and find out what is really going on with this case. And again, all these are allegations. People are innocent until proven guilty, but we do know that Kevin T. Simcoe actually admitted to wrongdoing in the mishandling of the file. But there's some other things that we feel like he needed to address, like why withhold clients' checks from them. So what is really going on there?
And like I said, it can't be a lack of experience in the judicial field, because certainly Kevin T. Simcoe has been licensed as an attorney for 22 years. It's not about going back to school to re-educate yourself as an attorney. You've been in the field, licensed in the field for 22 years.
Most attorneys in Canada suck, though. I mean, we understand that. They're horrible. Well, so having a license in Canada don't mean nothing.
Yeah, but you got to wonder, how did the government of Canada choose these specific attorneys to work with Canadian residential school survivors? What's their criteria, and how were these attorneys picked? And certainly, as you'll hear in his own words, in Peter's words, it was just botched in alleged incompetence, right from the get-go. And
well, some of it's alleged and some of it's admitted to. Kevin's admitted to some of the stuff.
That's right.
So,
but if he's admitted to it, why wasn't he held accountable? And it says here, there's no, according to what it says about Kevin T. Simcoe, no misconduct found. So did they just brush that
obviously
under the carpet and say, okay, he admitted to it, slap on the wrist, continue practicing law?
Yeah, I mean, and you know, that speaks volumes as far as the lawyers in Canada and you know, the quality of the Canadian attorneys. I mean, you know, it's just a horrible, horrible thing. And or you're getting shady people that are trying to con people. Now again, Kevin T. Simcoe is invited to the show to answer these allegations. And again, some of them are just allegations, and we would like answers to the allegations. I mean, you know, and if he wants to come on the show, please contact us. You can come on to the show and actually respond to this. I think it would do great if you were to actually come on to the show and answer the questions. But then again, some of the stuff you actually admitted to. So there you go.
And I think, and this is my personal opinion, I really think the government of Canada and the Roman Catholic Church would just wish all this residential school stuff would just go away and they could just brush it under the carpet and not admit to clearly what it is genocide, and they just want for it to go away. But it's not going to go away because the eyes of the world are certainly on Canada, folks.
And again, Peter Aleck is a residential school survivor. You'll hear in his interview the horrific tragedies and nightmares that he went through in the residential schools. And again, the Catholic priests were the molesters, were the abusers. And so people can say, oh, they can say, oh, I'm a devout Catholic, blah, blah, blah. I go to the Catholic church every Sunday or whatever. You can say whatever you want to say. It does not take away the fact that throughout history, even in present day, that the Catholic priests have abused and murdered children. And so you're going to hear it right from Peter. The abuse that he suffered is starting at the age of 4 years old, folks, and that is a nightmare. And he said he was screwed over essentially by his attorney and by the law firm. So I think there should be answers there, and he deserves to be heard.
And I think it's great that Peter Aleck stepped forward to tell this story, because certainly without truth, there can really be no reconciliation in regards to residential school survivors in Canada, folks.
Take a listen to the interview.
Today we're here with Peter Aleck, and I know that he's a residential school survivor, and we would like to say we're very sorry for the horrific atrocities yourself and all the other survivors had to go through with the residential schools. And I know you're in British Columbia, and you had something to discuss with us in regards to the lawyers who represented residential school survivors against Canada, and you had made the statement that in your mind they were some of the most corrupt lawyers in Canada. Could you kind of elaborate to our listeners, what your story is?
Yes. Well, when I completed my residential school clean, right?
Yes.
I tried to get my file back from my lawyer for 2 years. It cost me a lot of time and money and effort, but I managed to get it. But I had to go through the BC Law Society to get it. This lawyer did not want to hand it over. He said, oh no, he kept on telling me and my older brother, I got to hold on to it for 7 years. I kept on that. Why 7 years? I couldn't understand that.
Okay, I'm interrupting this interview right now because I want to highlight what Peter had just said. He said for 2 years he had tried to get his file back. Keep in mind, he paid $63,000 to the law firm to represent him. The lawyer kept his file from him for 2 years and was trying to tell him he had to keep it for 7 years. Now, the technicality there is after 7 years, the lawyer could destroy the file.
And the lawyer that we're speaking about is Kevin T. Simcoe. So I don't know how, in good faith, he could not release Peter's file. I mean, it just leaves your mind open to many, many interpretations on the reasoning why.
So back to the interview.
Right.
So when I talked to the BC Law Society about it, I asked them about the 7 years. They said, well, after 7 years, they get to destroy the file. So if I didn't get this file, I would have never found this corruption. What's in this file are other people's social insurance numbers, medical numbers, dates of birth, amounts of cash some of them got.
Right.
All personal and confidential information of other residential school survivors. That's what's in this file.
So,
and it starts right from
right.
the government down.
Okay, interruption again here because I'm trying to highlight and focus on what Peter is actually saying here, okay? What Peter just said was after he finally got the file back after 2 years, and by the way, you're entitled to your file while your attorney's working on your case. So Why he was keeping it from him, who knows? But when he finally got it, it had everybody else's personal information in it, a lot of people's personal information in it, which he could not understand why.
And that really is a breach of the Canadian Privacy Act to have people's medical information. They even had the monetary amount that they got as a settlement as a residential school survivor. All that information floating out in a file.
So back to the interview.
There has to be somebody pulling the strings. See, this file, I just pulled this complaint out the other night,
Okay.
and I read it. I did it so long ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this file was never signed off on by the Attorney General of Canada. So how did I get a residential school settlement if this file was never signed off on by the Attorney General of Canada?
Let me ask you this question, Peter.
You got to kind of wonder about it.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this question. Did your attorney give you an adequate reason why he was holding on to it for so long? He wouldn't even give you a copy of the file for 2 years?
No, like this was to hide the corruption, I guess. That's why he didn't want me to get this file. I was getting threatened 2-3 times a week by different people about this file for months. For months. People want this file back. We want that file. I said, no. I signed a legal release document from that law firm to me. And in that legal paper, it says, I am now the caretaker of this file and everything that's in it. I own it.
That being said, Peter, so you paid your attorney for his services, right? You paid the attorney.
$63,000.
Wow.
Double dipped.
Wow.
And what is the attorney's
He
name?
got paid by the government. He got paid by the government, and he took money from me.
What is his name?
Kevin Simcoe.
Kevin Simcoe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that raises the question on why, when you paid so much money, why was he not helping you out? And that you should file a complaint. Is that right?
Yeah, you did, didn't you? You filed a complaint with the BC Law Society.
I filed this complaint back in 2012 with the BC Law Society, and they did nothing to help me about this. Even with all this corruption, even though they saw all the corruption this lawyer did, they did nothing.
Wow.
They gave him a slap in the wrist and sent him on his way. Said, okay, we just got to send you back for a little more education. Because I got a response letter. He had to send a response letter back to the Law Society why he did what he did. And I read his response letter.
What does it say?
To the Law Society. Okay, I got the response letter from the BC Law Society in my hand right now. Okay, I'll read I'll just give you some of the stuff it says in here, okay?
Okay.
Okay, further to the telephone conversation on December 6, 2012. I have now completed my assessment of your complaint about Mr. Simcoe. The purpose of the assessment is to determine, based on the evidence, whether professional misconduct has occurred, requiring disciplinary or remedial in the sense of educational action by the Law Society. At the outset, I wish to acknowledge the time and effort taken by you to explain your concerns to the Law Society. We appreciate your patience with our process and recognize how the sensitive nature of the subject matter can bring up strong emotions. Through our investigation process, we have gathered considerable material on file. Please rest assured that I have considered all the information provided to the Law Society, either verbally or in writing. Although I may only refer to some of it in this letter. You are a former client of Mr. Simcoe, who assisted you in prosecuting an Indian residential school claim. a number of years ago. You now seriously question Mr. Simcoe's strategy to adjudicate your claim in the courts. When you eventually received and reviewed the client file from Mr. Simcoe, you discovered you were named in what appeared to be a class action suit. In addition, some of the claimants listed in that lawsuit were told you that they had their claims processed through the IAP process, which is an alternative dispute resolution model. Your claim was resolved through the conventional court process. I never did ever go to court.
Right.
Ever. I never faced a judge. There was no judge in the room. So how could I went through that process?
Wow.
You feel Mr. Simcoe developed a legal strategy based on what he felt was in your best interest, without adequate consultation or regard for your opinion. You are haunted by the nagging suspicion that if your claim was adjudicated through the IAP process, you may have received a higher compensation award. You also believe you are not fully informed of the terms of settlement or the nature of releases executed to finalize your claim. You are further concerned your discovery of materials in your client file containing typographical errors. How could they be typographical errors when you got people's names and their social insurance numbers? Those aren't typographical errors.
Of course not.
And confidential information relating to unrelated clients, unrelated matters. But that's like.
So they gave him a punishment for this, just a slap on the wrist, pretty much.
Pretty much, sent him back to school. Didn't disbar.
So he wasn't disbarred.
From some of the. He wasn't disbarred. The thing is, when I went to get my file, okay.
Right.
My file was not in the hands of the law firm I signed my agreement with. He had it with him in another law firm. How did my file get from Bilky Quinn Law Firm into another law firm without my consent? How did he remove that file? Why did he have my file in his possession?
Can we ask you this question? Yeah, and that does raise a lot of
red flags.
Red flags as far as this lawyer goes. But let's rewind prior to any of this happening and go take it back to the days of the residential school. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the instances that occurred to you during your time in residential schools?
Well, the first 5 years of residential school was the worst.
Right.
That's when the priests were still running the joint.
Right.
Okay. And the priests there, it was bad. Okay.
I know, Peter. We understand that it's very traumatic and a very sensitive topic, but we also believe that it's important that everybody hears truth, because without truth there can't be any reconciliation. People need to know, the truth, the horrific truth. And again, we're very sorry for what you had to go through, and so many others.
Well, the things that happened there were bad.
Yeah.
It's being an unprotected child and have those things done to you, like to have your head held under cold water, to have your mouth washed out with soap, to get sent to bed without having supper for stuff.
Yeah, that's that's horrific. That's inhumane.
And made to get up in the middle of the night. This is times I never had supper. This is times I got into some fights in a residential school.
Mm-hmm.
So I got sent to bed without supper, And around midnight, the priest supervisor, would come and wake you up and make you go running around the block while he's driving a car behind you, hollering, "Run faster."
Wow.
Run faster.
And these people claim to represent God, and they do not represent God. That God would not approve of children being treated this way at all. Okay, so keep in mind, these priests would pull out a 4-year-old child out of bed who hadn't had supper. They'd pull them out of bed at midnight, make them run while they followed them in the car and told them to run faster. These priests serve nothing but Satan. The Catholic Church is nothing but more than a satanic organization that's abused and murdered so many children. And you hear it right here from Peter as a 4-year-old child, how this priest was riding behind him at midnight in a car telling him to run faster. Can you imagine a child being done that way?
Obviously, these priests and nuns were not doing God's work. I don't care what anybody says. These were crimes against humanity, the brutality, sexual, physical abuse. These aren't human beings. These are monsters, folks.
That's all that works for the Catholic Church. These people do not serve God. And so the next time you enjoy walking yourself into the Catholic Church, keep in mind what they've done to the children.
Like, when I was sexually abused, like, I went there, I arrived there in September of '65.
Yeah.
When I was 4 years old.
Wow, 4 years old. Are you able to say the school, Peter, that you were at, or you'd rather not say the school name?
No, I was at the Kamloops Indian Residential School.
Okay.
And was this run by the Catholic priest?
Yes, it was run by the priests. In '65 it was. Yeah, when I arrived there it was.
And so I can imagine at 4 years old there was probably a lot of physical abuse as well. Is that correct?
Oh, lots of physical abuse. Like, well, you picture a kid today of 4 years old. They don't know what's going on.
Exactly.
Could you imagine how many kids were there that didn't know? Like, when I first arrived there in '65, my first thing I ever saw there was a whole room full of 4-year-old kids and younger going crazy.
Jeez.
Screaming, crying,
Yeah.
not knowing where they were, not knowing where their parents were. They're just throwing their stuff everywhere. I mean, they're just throwing clothes, whatever they had with them. They're just throwing their stuff everywhere.
So can you imagine being a 4-year-old and having your stuff thrown everywhere by people who are claiming to serve God? These demons, these worshipers of Satan, were just terrorizing these childs by throwing their belongings everywhere. These children went through a horrific time at these residential schools.
I mean, really, at age 4, what a horrific experience, you being taken, in some cases forcibly taken from your parents and your community and your family. I can't even fathom what these children went through.
And there's a difference between being a Christian. I'm a Christian. I'm not a Catholic. Catholic is not Christian. So for all those people out there that think they're going down the right path, you're going down the wrong path. You're listening to this story, and for you to say that you're proud to be Catholic is complete insanity to me, because you are not following the true Christian path by being a Catholic, being part of a church that has tortured, murdered, and raped children.
Wow, that's,
You know?
I can't even begin to imagine that. It's just, I can't wrap my head
But
around it.
could you imagine a room full of children not knowing what the hell's going on?
Exactly, and
Not knowing where they're at?
and where their parents, their family, it's just, I just can't even imagine. It's just sick, really sick and twisted It's sad to think that this happened in Canada. Everybody says, Canada. It really doesn't make me proud to be a Canadian, to see that this happened in modern times, and it was in modern times still as well.
And the Catholic Church is one of the most evil organizations that we've ever come across.
I was pretty young when I got sexually abused there.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, that's. I just.
I don't know. I might have been 5, 6 years old when that happened. That's when you're real vulnerable,
Of course, that's right.
That's when you really don't know what's going on.
Mm-hmm. I have to say, folks, that so many parts in this interview with Peter really bothered me, and I had a lump in my throat. What makes a Catholic priest or a Catholic nun want to be a pedophile and be a predator for young children? I mean, are they taught that? Are you born a predator or a pedophile? Why is it that the Catholic Church is just rife with pedophiles that feel the need or the power to want to sexually abuse children? I can't fathom that, and like I said, it's totally evil and diabolical, and I know the Catholic Church has asked for forgiveness. There is no forgiveness to abuse a very innocent child. It is sick. Murder, it is complete. It's a sickness, and it's been happening with the Catholic Church for hundreds and hundreds of years. Innocent children, and like I said, totally disturbing to hear this from so many people. And then we had a Catholic Church say that Catholic Church priest say that residential school survivors were lying. I don't think they're lying.
I know they're not lying. Let me say this. The church likes to preach it was Adam and Eve. Yes, it was Adam and Eve in the beginning. But these priests don't appreciate no adult, mature relationships. No, what do? They go out, they preach against homosexuality, but yet these male priests rape young boys. That's hypocrisy, folks. That's sickening. And you know what? I'd much rather see a homosexual priest than a priest that's actually raping young boys. I mean, that's a sickness, man. That's demonic on all levels, and it's got to stop. And you got to wake up and realize, people, you're not Christian if you're Catholic. You're not. Catholicism is so far away from the teachings of even Paul, let alone Jesus, that it's insane.
You have no clue of what's going on.
Right.
And that all the time, you're wondering where your mom and dad is. How come they're not coming to get you? How come they're not here to protect you?
That's right.
Where are they? Why aren't they here to stop this from happening to me?
Yeah, I just don't even know what to say, Peter. And you know what, Peter, I think the thing that strikes me, and I appreciate you coming out and telling people, but in my personal opinion, I think this attorney that you had, actually, he committed atrocities against you. So you had to go through all this horrific treatment at the residential schools, and then you have an attorney, and I think it's, in my opinion, or as you allege, that he was double dipping. He got paid from the government, and then he got paid from you. Is that correct?
Yes, well, I showed my file to one of the residential school support workers that were supposed to be out here to support the residential schools environment.
Right.
I showed her. I took this file. Me and two former chiefs of this reserve, elders. We went and sat down with this woman. Her name is Charlotte Billiou. We showed her my complaint. We showed her my file, and she's like, she just couldn't believe what was in her, but she didn't report it to anybody. She didn't help me. Is she supposed to be there to support residential school survivors? I showed her all this corruption. and everything.
Let me ask
When that law firm in Alberta got charged and they're going to Vancouver to go to court in Vancouver, I can't remember that law firm in Alberta got charged back then, but...
Let me ask you this, Peter, because I know a lot of people are going to be wondering, because you said you were in the school at 4 years old, and I kind of don't want to skip over that. It's how long was you in the residential school? So you got there at 4, but how many years were you there?
13.
13 years. And during that 13-year period, did it get any better or did it get worse throughout the 13 years?
Well, it got better maybe it got better in 1970 when the priests were no longer running the place, but there was still the odd priest working there.
Right.
But a lot of the old priests, they got shipped out, so...
And the point that I want to get...
Everything changed in about 19...
The point I want to get across, Peter, for everybody that's going to listen to this, is that you're saying that it got better once all the priests wasn't really there, because the priests were actually the abusers and the molesters, and that's what people need to understand when they go to their Catholic church every Sunday or whenever, that they got to understand the history here of the Catholic Church in Canada, and that these priests were actually the molesters and the abusers, and in many cases, so were the nuns. And so, and that's a shame. And you were there for 13 years. I believe you said you got there in 1965. Is that right?
65 when I was 4 years old.
And so,
I was born in 1960.
And so it didn't even lighten up until 5 years after you were there. You were 9 years old by the time the priest started leaving out of there. And so, this is tragedy, what has happened to you as a child. And we need people to hear your story. And then not only were you abused then, but then fast forwarding back to the lawsuit, the attorney is abusing you because you pay this attorney, and basically they're on their own plan, they're on their own game plan. You give them the money, and it just seems like they're not really working for you, and you paid them $63,000, and that's a shame.
You know how I found this file didn't even belong to me? Well, my name's on it. There's a number on it.
Mm-hmm.
Because he took a whole bunch of tax monies off me, so I went to H&R Block to try to reclaim my taxes, and that's when I found out about this corruption. That's how I found out about this. The taxes.
Right.
He took off me. I went to H&R Block to reclaim the taxes. That woman there looked at my paperwork, and she goes, "This isn't even your stuff, Mr. Aleck."
Wow.
I'm like, "What do you mean this isn't my stuff?" She goes, "Do you know what RE stands for?" I said, "No." She goes, "RE stands for regard, Mr. Aleck. And whose name is beside the regard owns this file. Your name is not beside that RE." Do you understand what I'm saying, Mr. Aleck? So you better go back to that law. You better go back to that law firm and get him to explain himself to you.
So what Peter, sorry to interrupt. What name was beside the RE? Was it the attorney or just another resident?
Olivia Adams.
Olivia Adams?
Another residential school.
Wow.
Olivia Adams.
Okay, yeah. Wow.
Her name was all over my file. Not just my file, but everybody's file. Like, me and my older brother went to talk to this Flavia.
Right.
And she told us something that we just could not believe. She told us this lawyer contacted her on different occasions and told her to meet him at the Bank of Montreal in Kamloops.
Okay.
So she did.
Right.
To cash his checks. I'm like, "What checks?" I said, "Did you see the checks?" He goes, "No, he already had them cashed. But he gave me cash for showing up."
Just for showing up. The lawyer gave her cash.
What do you mean? Yeah, something like, if I can remember, I think it was something like $30,000 or $40,000 or something like that. It was a large amount of money.
And is this guy still an attorney today?
I think he is.
Yeah.
I heard that, like I talked to a guy from APTN. He said this lawyer represented that Blackstock woman in her case.
That Cindy Blackstock?
Yeah, that he was her lawyer. Yeah, that's
Oh.
what that guy from APTN told me the other day.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Because they were keeping an eye on everything too. I guess APTN.
Well,
Yeah.
what's the status of everything currently that's going on with your case?
I don't know yet. Well, APTN wants to come out and do a story. They want to see all the documents I got. Like I say, this is a pretty thick file. Okay, all the paperwork I did, all the work I did, all the time it took me to put this whole complaint together.
Right.
I hope this attorney is listening.
A lot of writing, a lot of paper.
I hope this attorney is listening, because
Well, you better be listening.
now all the media
Because he kept trying to.
is coming after him as far as what he's done to you and the corruption that appears to be happened in your case especially. I mean, you got our show covering it. You're gonna have APTN, so yeah. Let's.
Yeah, I'm gonna read you something, okay?
Okay.
Like I took a lot of notes, okay?
Yes.
Okay, this I contacted the BC Information and Privacy Commission, okay? Because in my notes I got back from the Information and Privacy Commission of all the contact my lawyer had with the BC Information and Privacy Commission, I went through the notes and I found out that this lawyer was having secret meetings with the BC Information and Privacy Commission behind my back on weekends without my consent,
Right.
talking about me. So this is what I'm going to write. I wrote some stuff down here back in the day, okay?
Okay.
I'm going to read it to you, what I wrote down.
Yes.
Let's talk about how damn corrupt the legal system is. The governing body for attorneys are in Canada. It's so damn corrupt that you're hearing right here the client is saying that this attorney went behind his back and met with people behind his back without his knowledge. And how in the hell can he do that on behalf of him? How can he do that? And so the people that oversee the attorneys are so damn corrupt, they haven't done a damn thing to this attorney for all the bullshit that they've done to Peter.
And it's really, really sad, because when you pay an attorney, or you pay him to work on your behalf, and to find out that he's working behind your back without your consent, where's the ethics in that, folks? What are you paying for if you're not going to, pay for an attorney to advocate for you?
Exactly.
Okay, it says, these are the copies of the letters I received from the BC Law Society and one letter from the Privacy Commission of BC. I phoned Tim Watts of the BC Information and Privacy Commission. I informed him Kevin T. Simcoe was dishonest to him. I told Tim Watts my file was completed between 4 and 5 years ago, not more than 7 years ago. And Tim Watts' response was, I hope this lawyer did not deceive me. That's what he said.
Wow.
So what this lawyer did,
Yes.
I guess, when I asked the BC Law Society about the 7 years, they said, well, Mr. Aleck, after 7 years, the lawyer gets to destroy the file. That's why he was trying to hold on to it for 7 years, so nobody get a look at what was in there.
Wow.
So that's a way to cover up, pardon me, the corruption by him hanging on to that file.
Yeah, so that way he could destroy it after 7 years.
And that's right, destroy the paper trail. So what I'm hearing, from all this that you're saying is that, in 1965 you started attending Indian residential school, you went through a horrific experience, and now with this attorney and your school file, you're having to relive and go through corruption, and you have this attorney that you're paying, is supposed to have your best interest in working for you, but in a sense he's not working for you. So the priests leave the school, the government of Canada takes control. So again, now the government of Canada is trying to cover up all this corruption, discrepancies, payoff, etc. That's what I'm seeing from all this. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes. Okay, I got a letter here from the Peter Grant and Associates. Peter Grant was the executive director of the oversight committee that looked after all the lawyers across Canada. Okay.
Okay.
I got a letter because I tried to get him to help me with this file. Okay.
Right.
But I didn't know he was. I didn't know he was the executive director of the oversight committee that overlooked all the lawyers' work across Canada. Okay, was working on residential school.
Right.
Claims. But anyway, this is his letter back to me.
Okay.
Dear Mr. Aleck, thank you for your information you forwarded with respect to your complaint to the Law Society relating to Mr. Simcoe. Mr. Kevin Simcoe. I am returning that information to you with this letter. Unfortunately, our law firm cannot act on your behalf because I am a representative of those lawyers who were participating in the negotiation of residential school settlement agreements, who are collectively independent counsel. As Mr. Simcoe is a member of that group, neither I nor any other lawyer in my firm can assist you respect to this matter. I do not know whether or not you have spoken directly with Mr. Simcoe, who, to my understanding, is no longer with the former law firm that he was with. It may be possible that some of the questions and concerns you have, you may be answered by a direct discussion with him. I apologize that we are unable to act, and this is a result of the issue of conflict of interest and the rules of the Law Society, and that we are unable to act. I'm certainly not making any judgment with respect to the merits of your complaints. Yours truly, Peter Grant and Associates. That's the letter I got back from him. And he was the big cheese that looked over, like it says right there, he looked over all lawyers' work that did residential school claims.
And you know what?
He okayed this lawyer's work.
Oh my God, that's insane.
I just looked up as we're talking right now. I just looked up. Kevin is Kevin T. Simcoe. Is that correct? That's his name, and he operates out of Kamloops law firms. And I just now looked on a website, and they have the audacity to say he's in good standing. How in the hell can this attorney in Kamloops, this work in Kamloops law firms, be in good standing when they take $63,000 from a residential school survivor, and basically there's doing very, very questionable things,
shady things,
and it doesn't seem right.
I'm going to read something. I got a letter from one other client, and she was an elder. I don't know if she's still alive, but we went to talk to her about this, okay?
Right.
And this is her response letter she sent to Kevin. Regarding Kevin Simcoe, 1540 Spring Hill Drive, Kamloops, BC. Mr. Simcoe acted as my legal counsel. My case was dealt with over a period of 8 years.
Right.
It has been closed. Recently, I received a particular phone call from a person I have never met by the name of Mr. Peter Aleck. Mr. Aleck informed me that he was in possession of documents pertaining to me that had been held in confidence with Mr. Simcoe at his office in Kamloops. Mr. Aleck explained to me that after he had picked up his own file from Mr. Simcoe's office, inside he discovered my documents along with a number of other documents belonging to other clients. As I received this telephone call from Mr. Aleck, I was in shock. I was frightened as I thought, how could this be happening? How could my personal and confidential information end up in a stranger's hands? I trusted Mr. Simcoe that my file was being handled on an individual basis, not as a group. I trusted Mr. Simcoe that my case was closed and sealed. Not so. I am now struggling with the fear, confusion, and frustration of how this event has come about and what to do now that my confidential information is unsafe. As a person of unlimited education and legal resources, I am very distressed with this disturbing incident. I feel very intimidated, disrespected, and violated by Mr. T. Simcoe. Sincerely yours. I don't want to say the woman's name, but...
Right. And for the people listening, I do have information on this attorney right now, and you're right. It is 1540 Spring Hill Drive in Kamloops, British Columbia. Yeah. And the firm that this says that he's working for is Springford and Simcoe, LLP. So the thing is, so my question will be this: how in the hell can any person trust this Simcoe? No one, it seems, has their information, their confidential information, safe in the hands of this attorney. I would highly advise against using Simcoe as your attorney. This is not just one complaint. Peter is not just one complaint. He has letters, several complaints against this attorney with regards to people's confidential information getting out and getting into other people's hands.
And you'll note in this particular letter that's shown here that this individual that is not being named says that Mr. Simcoe began to laugh at me, making me feel very uncomfortable. And then they said that I am very distressed with yet another unsettling confrontation with Mr. Kevin Simcoe.
This is a questionable attorney that has questionable activities dealing with clients, clearly. More than one, more than you. Also with this other lady that sent you that letter. And so it seems like he thinks maybe he has gotten away with this.
But I went to talk to that lady that wrote his lawyer. I went right to her reserve. It took me about a year to find all these people that I needed to find to do this investigation, okay?
Right.
All the names of that, and all the social insurance, who owned the social insurance numbers and all that.
Uh-huh.
It took me about a year, maybe just over a year to find. I had to phone many different reserves and ask questions if they had a band member there by that name. You know?
Mm-hmm.
And, but anyway, I'm gonna read you something. I got lots of shit. I got a lot of stuff written down here.
Sure, no problem. Go ahead, Peter.
Hey, I wrote this down. I called it the conspiracy, okay?
Okay.
That's what I got written on top?
Right.
Okay, my number one thing was the conspiracy had to have started in 2004 or earlier when I was working out in Ontario. I never had much contact with my lawyer. The 3-hour time difference made it difficult to have to connect with one another. I never received much dialogue to keep me updated with my file. I never had a court registry number when I came out to Kamloops for my first discovery in December 13th of 2004. Slavia must have had her discovery before me because her court registry number is 2870, missing one number.
Right.
I wonder what that one number is. I bet you it's a number 1. because that number is also on my file. The same number, except hers doesn't have the number 1 in it. I would like to know why Flavia's court registry number is on all my documents, all my documentation, along with her name, because we never did see each other at any time during our cases. Didn't even know she had a lawsuit happening. I would like to know why it took almost a year to get called back to Kamloops to finish my discovery, especially when I was told I would be called in 2 weeks to complete my discovery, which should have been early January 2005. Okay, so
Right.
I had to go through 2 discoveries, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as I'm going on here, okay, in 2005, January, well, I phoned Kevin T. Simcoe from Ontario occasionally to find out what was taking so long for the government to send for me and what was going on with the whole situation. Kevin told me the government sent the wrong lawyers up to Kamloops the first time to examine me on my first discovery. He told me the two young lawyers were asking me questions they were not supposed to be asking me. I was upset to hear him say this. I was upset to hear him say that on November 8, 2005. I finally got called back. Oh no. I finally got told to fly back to Kamloops. I worked out in Ontario for almost 13 months. I worked 7 days a week with 1 day off a month. I worked 12 to 14 hours a day, so it was hard to connect with Kevin T. Simcoe. I was laid off by my boss. Okay, so, but anyway, I went on to say I was upset a lot because I was left open and hanging, wondering what was taking so long for the government to finish my discovery. I did a lot of thinking and asking myself questions, what did I do wrong? I know Kevin T. Simcoe never had my best interest, took advantage of me. I felt he was in cahoots with the government in a lot of the ways he did. He did a poor job in representing me. I did most of the late talking in my own defense. Mr. Kevin just sat there, and Neil White, who was a residential school support worker.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
Are you there?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're here.
We're here,
anyway,
Peter.
Neil White.
We're here.
Neil White was sitting in there. Same with my older brother was sitting in there when my discoveries were going on, okay? I sat in there for 9 hours.
Right.
The first one. But anyway, this is what happened. Kevin Simcoe just sat there. And Neil White had to take Kevin out and give him a talking to about his job performance. Pretty bad. Paying him $300 an hour just to sit there like a lump on a log and do nothing.
Wow.
That's what I wrote.
Well, yeah, and
I would like to know
and you paid him $63,000, and he really screwed you over. It seems like, and that's from listening to your story. This attorney has a lot to answer for. And go ahead.
I wrote this note down. I would like to know who orchestrated this conspiracy. Who was Kevin working for? Who was Kevin working with? I feel whoever I signed my retainer agreement with is responsible. So I wrote down this. I said, where is Kevin T. Simcoe's code of ethics or morals or integrity? He was out to look after his own best interest before his client's best interest. Why did it take Kevin so long to complete my file?
Yeah.
Who gave Kevin permission to put other clients from personal confidential information in my case file? I thought clients' lawyers' confidentiality was the utmost importance when a person hires a lawyer. I need to draw up a list of all the things that don't add up in my case file. Forgery, fraud, professional misconduct, failed to take a direction, and other things. I need to figure out who is behind the conspiracy.
Right.
I called Bill, because Bilky Quinn is the one I signed my retainer. That's who I retained as my law firm, okay?
Right.
So it says, I called Bilky Quinn law firm this morning on February 20th, 2012, and asked them for the rest of my claim file. I was told that the law firm was no longer Bilky Quinn. It was just David Bilky, and Quinn went to a different law firm. And Kevin Simcoe has his own law firm called Springfield. What did you say it was Springfield?
Springford and Simcoe.
Springfield and Simcoe.
Springfield.
And Kevin took my file with him. When he went on his own way. I told Bilky law firm I never signed a letter of release for Kevin to remove my file from Bilky Quinn's law firm. I would like to know if Kevin T. Simcoe was telling me the truth when he told me my offer of $240,000 was rejected by the courts of Canada. If it was, why wasn't I at the courthouse to hear this, to hear the judge tell me that himself? I feel Kevin T. Simcoe was not be honest with me from day one, from the day I signed a retainer agreement with Bilky Quinn in 1999.
Okay, so now Peter just brought up a good point. Is there a conspiracy between the court and the attorneys to screw the residential school survivors out of what they are entitled to? That's a good question. This needs to be investigated rigorously. And I mean, there's so much potential criminal activity that's going on, allegedly, that needs to be looked into. And again, Kevin Simcoe, you're invited to the show to answer the questions. Please, if you want to come on the show, we would love to have you come on the show to answer some of these questions and allegations. And but again, you have admitted to the society that you have done wrong with, at least in some of the instances, you call typos and clearly a mishandling of the files, which resulted in people's confidential private information being released to other people.
And some of our listeners may not be familiar with the Indian residential school class action settlement and what does the settlement provide. And the settlement provides common experience payment, or CEP, and at least $1.9 billion plus interest will be made available for lump sum payments to former students who lived at one of the residential schools. And residential school survivor, they can receive a range of compensation between $10,000 and $200,000 based on the abuse they suffered. The abuse that they suffered sexually or physically, it's priceless. You can't put a price, you can't get those years back, folks.
Yep, no, you can't. I think that's not enough money for the abuse that's happened to these people. And what about the kids that were actually murdered? And it's very sickening. And again, a lot of this is allegations. A lot of it Kevin has admitted to, as far as the mishandling of the file and the typos.
So when discrepancies with the paperwork, signatures are forged because I was not around to sign anything. See, a lot of paperwork was forged because I wasn't around to sign stuff, right? Because I was working out in Ontario.
Do you know who
So
signed
he must
it?
have just signed a bunch of stuff for me without my consent.
So, Peter, sorry to interrupt you. So,
No?
hi, Peter. You're assuming that since you weren't around to sign legal paperwork, are you saying that you're assuming or you're alleging that Kevin T. Simcoe signed your name?
Yes, I looked at the signatures, and the signatures, that's not the way I signed my name.
Let me ask you this question, Peter. In many cases, and I'm going to play the devil's advocate here for a moment. In many cases, when you sign paperwork with an attorney, they'll have you also sign a power of attorney where a lawyer can sign for you. Now, you didn't sign any agreement like that, giving Kevin the permission to sign? Okay.
No, it doesn't say anything like that in the retainer thing I signed with him. No.
So then he would have forged your name, or somebody would have forged your name then if there was no such agreement.
No. No such agreement.
Okay.
And you know what, Peter? I think Peter, the scary part for you and a lot of the clients is that Kevin T. Simcoe, who is now with Springford and Simcoe, is that his status, like Timothy said, is in good standing, and he's been licensed as an attorney for 22 years, and there's apparently no misconduct found. I don't know how in the hell
that's a lot of crap.
He swung that, because, I mean, misconduct, I mean, just the breach of Privacy Act. You have people's personal sensitive information just floating around in somebody else's file. That's a privacy violation.
But let's talk about the forgery thing here, because Peter's saying that he gave no permission for the attorney to sign.
Do you know how upset some of these people were when I read some of their social service numbers back to them. They were very upset. They're like, who the fuck are you? How did you get my information?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know you. I said, well, it's in my file. That's why I know what your social insurance number is. You are this person, right? She goes, yeah. How did you get my number?
Yeah.
And when we went to talk to this one woman, me and my brother, she told us that she was missing money, a large amount of money out of her bank account.
Wow.
Can you figure that one out?
So we're talking about potential criminal activities here by somebody.
Well, I mean,
she said she got her claim money and she put it in her bank account.
Right.
And she went to her bank account and she noticed a whole bunch of money missing out of it.
Wow.
She didn't know how it got out of there. But now I think I know how, because Kevin Simcoe has everybody's information to do identity theft.
Now, we want to make a point that this is alleged identity theft, because as far as Simcoe goes, because we don't have proof that he's actually done it. Well, what you're saying is he had enough information to have the capability of doing it. That's what you're saying.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. And so there's a huge problem here. I hope APTN does come and cover the story. I know we're the first ones. I believe we're the first ones to cover this story. Is that correct?
Yes.
And I hope APTN does pick it up as well, and then maybe CBC.
I talked to a native lawyer from Kamloops a long time ago when he was still, well, he got disbarred, okay?
Okay.
For what he did, I guess, during his residential school claim stuff, but he got disbarred.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I contacted him, and I told him what I had. He said, wow, this has to go to the highest courts of Canada.
The Supreme Court of Canada, yes.
That's where it is going. He said, this is where this has got to go. This whole file you got's got to go to the highest courts of Canada, because there's just so much corruption by this law firm and this lawyer.
Well, let me ask you a question, Peter, because a lot of people are going to hear this show. What is it that you want them to hear? Now, they're going to hear everything that you just said, but what points would you like for the people to hear to get through to our listeners? What's the key points here to take away?
Well, I just want them to know that this happened, okay?
Yes.
That this happened, and it should have never happened. And that's why I think a lot of residential school files, that's why I think a lot of residential school survivors never got their file back. I'm going to tell you this. This file will never match the file that Ottawa's got, okay?
Right.
Ottawa's got a copy of my file. I would like to see that file and see if it's the same as what I got here. And I guarantee you it's not the same. When I phoned Ottawa about my file, that's where I started my stuff. I phoned Ottawa, where they kept the residential school files in the archive.
Mm-hmm.
I talked to a woman there in the archives in Palo. She told me, "Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Aleck. Your paperwork's in about 15 different files here. It's going to take us 2 weeks to find all your paperwork to put your file back together." Can you imagine that?
Good, jeez. Wow. Why would
Imagine if everybody's file ended up in Ottawa like that. Why do you think residential school survivors never got their file back? Because they didn't have a file to make sure it matches the one in Ottawa.
Yeah, there's some controversial stuff going on here, and
okay, like I would like to know, what does a Chinese guy case number, like court case number, doing in my file?
exactly.
I went and got that number checked out in Callan's courthouse, and that woman says this number belongs to this Chinese guy, and she wrote the name down. So I got the name written down here. Who owns that court number, that case number, at the courthouse in Callan?
Yeah.
I'm like,
the problem is that he's admitted to the mishandling of your file, obviously, and to say that he's in good standing is a huge problem. But when you paid the $63,000, who did you initially pay that to again? What firm?
I think it was
Here, you saying that you've been threatened over the file, and the first person that you're saying threatened you on this was who?
Well, he's not the first person, but yeah, he might be the first person. Tim Motts of the BC Information and Privacy Commission.
And what kind of threat did he issue you?
He said, "Well, you better give that file back or else we're going to send you to jail." I said, "No, you're not. I signed a legal document from Kevin Simcoe's law firm to get this file, so you're not going to do nothing to me. If you were going to do anything to me, you would have done it by now. The cops would have been at my door."
So it's threats and intimidation.
I just put out this legal document.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I told him, well, all I got to do is put out the legal paper saying this file is now mine. I signed for it.
Right.
So you're not going to do nothing to me.
Right. And folks, that's going to wrap it up for this portion of the show. We would like to thank Peter for joining us and telling his story. We know that it was difficult. We did not include the whole entire interview in here, but we included at least 80% of the interview in here. And he has a whole lot more to say, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. You know, there's some huge issues going on within the court systems and within the societies that oversee the attorneys, and with the attorneys themselves that need to be deeply looked into. And again, the Catholic Church, they clearly have been doing the work of Satan. And again, I am a Christian, so Catholicism and Christianity is two different things. Catholicism has strayed so far away from Christianity that it is insane, and its roots, it's rooted in lies, and its roots are not even close to the true Christianity, those who truly serve Christ, those who truly serve God. And so, you know, sadly, people are confused on what Christianity is, and people think the Catholic Church is the way to go. If you hear these stories, and there's many survivors out there, and you see how the priests and nuns have done them, the murders, the sexual assaults. I don't see how anybody can enjoy being Catholic at all. Again, Peter, thank you for joining us. Kevin, you are invited to the show if you want to answer any of the allegations, or if you want to own up to stuff that you already admitted to and maybe clarify some of the stuff. But we want to thank everybody who's joined us and supported us over the years. We want to thank you for your support, and keep listening to the show. We'll try to bring you more shows, but again, we've been very, very busy, and what you see with the show is just one part of what we do. So we've been extremely busy, and we'd like to thank y'all for joining us, and that's it for now.